Hello, John. Happy to have you here. Welcome. Excited to see you with your Blue Jays hat on. So go Canada. And obviously, we'll hear more about what you're doing, how you're changing or breaking boundaries on neuroscience, mental health, technology as well. So welcome.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And I got to represent Canada since we're talking.
Amazing. So please feel free to let us know more about yourself. What have you been doing in these last couple of years? What's your story behind where you're at right now? It's really good to learn from you and see what brought you into neuroscience, mental health.
Yeah. So I literally born and raised 1976. So I'm an old timer, man. 49 years old. Had a really good life, and around 32, I ended up starting to get a little bit. Just think of a funk. Think of your kind of sadness that you typically get, and it just wouldn't leave my body. And I really had no idea what was going on. I'm your extroverted kind of middle child, emotional kid who's just going all the time, and I just started to really get muted. I think that's the easiest way to put it. It kind of lasted for roughly a year. I didn't know what was happening, and I went to my first therapist and was told that I had major depressive disorder, which to me didn't make any sense. And I looked up the definition, and it was exactly what I was going through, and started a very, very long decade battle of essentially going slowly into the abyss of hell is the easiest way to put it. And, after your first two failed medications, you're considered what's something called treatment resistant. And I was treatment resistant very quickly. The journey ended up taking me through over 10 different medications. I ended up doing 2 stays in residential treatment programs for 30 days. I had 3 intensive outpatient plans, 3 partial hospitalization plans. I did psychedelics. I did something called transcranial magnetic stimulation 36 times. And I did electroconvulsive therapy 11 times. And the only thing that happened through every single medical intervention that I got was zero relief. Nothing helped. Nothing made me better. And that literal maniacal hell just kept growing in my body. That's the simplest way to put it. Is my 2 most primary symptoms were constant suicidal ideation, as consistent as breathing, and also just the physical feeling of dread and death. When you take a cold or a flu and you feel that, tingling body sensation that just consumes you. I also had that, and I could feel in my fingertips death. And so that is what very serious clinical depression looks like. And it was absolutely horrific.
Wow, thanks for sharing that personal story. I bet if someone has gone through it that is listening to us, it might resonate with them. And if not, it's a good time sometimes to have the information on a timely manner. It can be maybe, in my case, my kids are growing up and I can sometimes help or detect things. So totally good to hear, to see how maybe you evolved into what you're doing today, how you're helping others. And I believe one of the key highlights within your path or what you have been pushing forward is this research portion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, research is everything. And, I will tell you the consistencies are one of my big takeaways in regards to the confusion with the brain disease of serious mental illness, and especially with depression, is, the ignorance of society is astonishing to me. And education for me is something that's going to be very important for the rest of my life. And before I get into research, I'll highlight this. For people that don't understand the brain disease of depression, and for the ignorant folks that say snap out of it, what do you have to be depressed for? That's just a lack of understanding. That's pure ignorance is the easiest way that I could put it. And to explain that, when people say that, they're talking about an emotion. So every single person has felt sad, aka depressed. Every single person has been angry. They've been happy. But guess what? The normal cycle of life is you have human emotions that come in your body and they enter and they exit, they in and out, right? You could wake up bummed, right? And then later that day, you're going with your kids to a Blue Jays game and you're feeling really good, like that's life. So the disease of serious depression, severe depression, is that emotion of sadness that never, ever, ever leaves your body and just slowly gets worse over time. And guess what? It gets worse because of society's judgment and blame and ostracizing and shame. So beautiful human beings who are suffering with serious mental illness, who all they need is love and empathy, get the exact opposite from the world. And so when you think of serious mental illness for depression, it's the symptoms that I said. The brain disease of schizophrenia, for instance, is hallucinations, is paranoia. The brain disease of bipolar is you have ups and you have downs. The brain disease of OCD, right? These are all diseases. The symptoms are just different. The only similarity between all of them is the complete and utter ridiculous and unjustness and stupidity of society for blaming and judging and ostracizing and, dare I say, literally pissing on these people who need nothing but love and kindness. So that is what the number one challenge is with our world. And I can prove that. And now I get into your question about research. And so being the level of treatment resistant that I was, there's not many people still alive at that point. I should be dead. 100,000% should be dead. And the reason I am not is I was extremely fortunate to have one little string holding me back onto reality. These diseases take every single string to reality that you have away. That's the entire goal. The entire goal of serious mental illness is to kill you, is to murder you. That's the entire goal of it. And so when people die by suicide from these horrifically maniacal, horrific diseases, what they are doing is exactly what the disease has asked you to do. And they have lost all of those connections to reality. So they have just had a more severe form of the disease than I did. And they're some of the strongest, most beautiful people in the world to live as long as they did, with a disease as maniacally horrific as serious mental illness, with the gasoline and fuel that is being thrown on by the stupidity of society. So that's the first thing. People who have died by suicide are extremely strong, and society is 100,000% to blame for their death. I end up being very fortunate to have that string to reality still there, which was my children going back to school after I died by suicide and being judged, blamed, shamed, blamed, and teased. And guess what? That happens. That's the reality of serious mental illness in this world, is not only does it take your life, then after you die, your society now pisses on your grave. And then they make fun of your family, and then they judge and ostracize them, and you don't get life insurance. And now they get to deal with the stigma of having one of their family members die by suicide. That is the reality of our world, and it's completely ridiculous. So I end up getting into a clinical trial at a Mount Sinai hospital for deep brain stimulation. And so deep brain stimulation was approved in 2004 for Parkinson's disease. And so the brain disease of Parkinson's, one of the main symptoms that it has is tremors and shaking. And so as soon as they stimulate electricity in the broken portion of the brain for Parkinson's, boom, you immediately stop shaking. And it's incredible. Right? It's an absolute beautiful, incredible scientific procedure that is done, that is neurotechnology at its finest. And so they figured out, listen, 30 years of research and understanding that if you go to the subcolossal cingulate of the brain and you stimulate the subcolossal cingulate of the brain with constant electricity, you're going to be able to cure depression. So that's what they did. They ended up putting a pacemaker right here in my chest. I have a wire that goes up the side of my head. I have 2 different bumps that you can see right there. Those are essentially the holes that are in the top of my head covered up by those bumps. Those are essentially the coverage for them. And I have 2 electrical leads that go down with 8 little dots, 8 little electrodes on the very bottom. And they're stimulated with 22.5 million electrical pulses per day. Unlike a heart pacemaker, which shoot when your heart needs it, This goes all the time, 24/7, just like the Parkinson's one. And as soon as they started stimulating this portion of my brain that was inactive, I immediately am in remission from this disease. It's been 3 years. So August 22nd of 2022, I have this 8-hour procedure in an academic scenario, New York City. I wake up the next morning, they turn this device on, and I have never had a single suicidal thought since. I've never felt the disease in my body ever again. Gone. Remission. I'm absolutely proof of the biological nature of the disease, brain disease of depression. I have proof of additional brain diseases of serious mental illness with a very good friend of mine with OCD. Her symptoms weren't shaking. Her symptoms weren't wanting to die. But what her symptoms were a fear of leaving the house and leaving the bathroom. She was in her home for 3 years. She was in her bathroom for 18 hours a day for the last 3 years of her life because of contamination fears. She ends up having the same exact surgery I do, deeper in the brain, double the amount of electricity. And guess what? She's totally fine. She's absolutely in remission of these brain diseases. And so coming out of this and absolutely in awe, like I did this because I was hoping that I'd die on the table. Because if I died on the table, my family gets life insurance, and then people feel bad because I died in an accident, right? They feel sorry for my family, unlike they would if it was done the right way that the disease wanted to do. So the first thought that I have is like, oh my God, like I can feel again. I can literally feel. I can feel joy. I can enjoy life. I can feel the ocean water on my skin and just absolutely love it. I can, enjoy the embraces and the hugs. I can enjoy going on vacation again. I can enjoy being around people. I get to literally embrace and be around life and be around love again. And just surreal to be able to feel again. And then the second thought that I have is very simple. I'm fucking pissed. Going through this exact experience that I've had for 10 years and having your soul destroyed and having society spit on you, and then going through it and realizing that all you have is a brain disease and that it's only made worse because of the stupidity of society, it infuriates me. When you have the number one disability in the world is depression, that's the number one disability in the entire world, depression. Because one of the main reasons is because you have people waiting a decade to seek treatment because of the judgment and the shame and the absolute ridiculous unjustness of society. And so for me to sit here and see that we have millions and millions of people around this entire globe suffering for no reason other than the stupidity of society because they don't want to go in and get treatment because they feel shame is absolutely ridiculous to me. And to highlight how bad the stigma is, in certain cultures, you can't even talk about it. Can't even talk about it. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Could you imagine waiting 10 years when you were diagnosed with breast cancer to go seek treatment because you feel shame from society? Would make zero sense, right? All I know is that my neighbor 2 houses up has cancer, and to see the beauty of how the world treats cancer is exactly what needs to happen. The amount of people lined up at her door to drop off meals, one after the other, to line up to take her to radiation, to take her to chemotherapy, to sit next to her while she's getting treatment is absolutely the most stunningly beautiful thing that you see in regards to how diseases are treated and handled by society. Take the exact opposite of that, and that is how the brain disease of serious mental illness is treated by the world and by society, which is completely ridiculous, and it's why everybody suffers and dies.
And one of the key things that probably will help change things, break this stigma, manage or have a better management overall as a society is just doing what you're doing, spreading the word, educating others on the topic of how I think overall, since we are born and we start to grow up, our feelings get suppressed, right? Because we have to behave. We have in within the society in a certain way. We're okay showing, as you say, like if we're happy, it's fine. We can cheer and we do things. But the opposite thing is like, no, that's not something that we need to show others. That's probably, and I can blame myself guilty when there's something physical happening. Is like, oh, okay, let's go to the doctor, let's take these,
Mhm.
put hands on because it's something physical, versus a mental thing. Sometimes we, or myself, I'm like, okay, you just have to control yourself or think
Mhm.
positive or just set your mind in something specific and then you'll get things done. But obviously, as you mentioned, based on your personal story, I do find maybe the same way, like it happens from a physical standpoint. Every human being is different, and if we're talking about the brain, it's even more complex, right, than just the regular organs in our body. So it totally helps to have a different perspective and to see like the way you got the treatment you got in place, how it made a difference. And probably for myself, it's a really great way to be more aware of anyone around me, because there's always, I'm pretty sure anyone listening to us will think about someone that, okay, I know probably this person, I haven't been too close to him or her because they might be not as pumped on things that I am, and we might not resonate with each other. So off we go. We'll let them be, and whenever they're happy, we'll reconnect, or whenever they're feeling well, then we'll chat. So totally a great eye opener, and I feel we have to do a better job as a society to support others. To We can make things change for good, and we have social media in place, but sometimes if it's not used properly, it can just make things worse. I'm pretty sure from our youth, the world is way different than it was for us, and it can maybe just make these suicidal thoughts happen faster. And you can
Yeah.
explain if that's correct, if I'm making a right assumption here, or based on what you know, if that
Yeah.
could be the case.
Couple things. So examples of stigma for the world to understand is it's completely normal for us to take care of our teeth. Let's go to the dentist preventatively a couple times a year. Our eyes. Let's go take care of our eyes. Our physical. Let's go take care of our physical once a year, right? Yet, taking care of the most complex computer system in the planet, which is your brain, and proactively seeking therapy isn't something that's accepted by society. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's how we have been treated, and that is how we have been taught societally as we grow up, that ooh, we're perceived as weak. Makes zero sense whatsoever, right? So this is proactive management of your mind and of you of doing it, right? That's an example before things progress to the level of dysfunction that is mental illness. And then when you take it further, I have a wonderful friend of mine who is also had to leave for disability for depression, go out and work. And the year before, she actually been battling depression her whole life. The year before, she had broken her pelvis in a fall off of a horse. And she had to rehabilitate in basically a nursing home for 6 months. That's how broken her body was. About 2 hours away from her house, she had to be in this facility. She said weekly, she had multiple visitors come to her to see her, to be with her, to show empathy, to show kindness, to show love, and to help her through her rehabilitation. Her friends, right? Her family. She was at home on disability for depression, pretty much had nobody come see her. Let's spit on her, right? That is the ridiculous and the absurdity. And the last one that I will share is this. Think about your work world. Everybody, anybody listening to this, think about their work world. Think about their close-knit group of friends in their world, in their society, in their town, right? How many people do you know that have been stricken with cancer? A fair amount. And it's horrible and it's awful, right? How many people do you know that have been stricken with depression? with serious mental illness? Not many, right? Well, the prevalences are pretty much identical, pretty much the same exact thing. That shows you exactly the reality that we are in. Let's hide certain diseases that society does not find acceptable because, ooh, we don't want to make them uncomfortable, versus ones that are acceptable. Nobody has asked for anything. Nobody has asked for a disease that they have, yet they're treated totally differently. That to me is completely ridiculous. And that is the biggest problem that we have. We can save the #1 biggest public health crisis in the absolute planet of serious mental illness, can be literally cut, in my opinion, in half, if not more than that. No scientific validation here. I just have common sense. That's what I use. And we can do that by doing two things. Two, that cost zero money, nothing, nada, zilch. You don't need to bring in consultants to do this. What you need to do is you need to show empathy to these beautiful human beings who are suffering from serious mental illness, and then be kind. That's it. That's all that we have to do. There's this new thing called an empath unit at hospitals that is showing success. And what that empath unit is for when people who come to a hospital who are in crisis, mental illness crisis, and they put them in an empathetic, caring environment with people who treat them like human beings, they get out of the hospital much quicker. Their ability to heal is much better. It's not hard. All we have to do is be normal, kind human beings to people who need empathy and kindness more than anybody in the world. And we as a society do the absolute opposite and throw gasoline on them and light a frickin' match. That's what pisses me off. And that's something that we can do a much better job of as a human frickin' species than we're doing right now, because what we're doing is causing suffering and death. And I'm going to literally scream this from the rooftops until the day I die.
Well, that's a great mission. And I'm pretty sure you'll change lots of lives, and spreading the word and having that story, like the personal story you shared, it totally helps create that empathy, the connection to understand better as well. Because sometimes we just listen about news or mental health, and we don't really understand from someone directly, like we're doing right now, talking and looking from your perspective, putting ourselves into your shoes, which is important. I think in some ways we have lost that. In other ways, there's this awareness through society. I feel that we're trying to become a better version from an overall mental health perspective. For me, not sure if it's an age thing or if it's just maybe since COVID, I became more aware about this mental health, because like being okay, being aware that there's no shame on taking care of myself if I'm not feeling well. As you mentioned, it's not just physically, you have also this mental component of feeling overall this wellness perspective, not just on the physical side of things. So I totally agree with you. I'm changing one day at a time, one person, two will help spread things out. And I'm pretty sure, as you mentioned, kindness. I remember at some point in time, I've told my kids, like, be kind whenever possible, because it's always possible. We can always show kindness. We can always be more empathetic with others. We don't know the story behind us as humans, and there's things that change. Tables change rapidly, and one day or another, we might find ourselves or a loved one that will be going through a hard time. So better to probably share some love. It's always there. It's just like a simple smile, right? Throughout the day, you can make someone's day better just because you're smiling.
It's all you got to do. You know, if you know of somebody struggling and you just tell them you love them, gosh forbid you proactively bring them over a meal. I came home one day and my neighbor mowed my lawn. You know how amazing of a feeling that was, to have a proactive kindness, gesture of kindness? It's all you got to do. I'll never forget that. That felt better than any multi-$1,000 bonus I've ever gotten in my life, right? Truly, you know, just the human kindness is all that we need. And I respect you tremendously for teaching that to your children, because those are the most important things, is, you know, treat every single human being the exact same, and be kind and be respectful. And that's all you got to do. And, you know, I wish that us as a society would be able to do a better job at that. And yeah, I do say, from a stigma standpoint, here's the coolest part, is I do have some positive messages, which is 50 years ago, the most freaking stigmatized condition in the planet was cancer. You know, they literally called it the big C, don't let anybody know, right? And so being able to see where it has progressed into is really beautiful. And it's nice to know that change can happen. I can only hope that change can happen. The challenge is that, you know, the older generation, oh my, it's almost impossible. You know, the younger you are, the less stigmatized it is. The older you get, the more stigmatized it is. Certain cultures are absolutely horrific when it comes to mental illness, serious mental illness. And so all we can do is educate. And here's the best part about it, and the reason that I talk is as powerful and as in your face as I do, is I'm not wrong. And so I want to tell every single person, and I want to come at it with fire, because guess what? We've had a bazillion stigma campaigns to date. And guess what happens? Nothing. We still have the most stigmatized planet in the world when it comes to serious mental illness. That's absurd and ridiculous to me. And so pulverizing the stigma is going to be my mission, as I said, for the rest of my life. All we need to do is show empathy and be kind, and we save freaking millions of people from suffering and dying. Sign me up. I don't understand why every single person in the world wouldn't want to do that, but they don't. And so those people, to me, are horrific people. And I'm going to call you out on that for the rest of your life.
Thank you, John, and your candor, your openness. I think that's the way to go to make things change and to make them happen. So kudos to you. And one of the other things that I would like to ask, is there a specific, let's say, flag signal that maybe can shed some light for someone to notice they're going through a specific, like this depression you went through? It's just like that constant feeling, or maybe if I'm a parent, something that I should note or...
Yeah, the number one thing that I would say to anybody who's feeling low for a consistent amount of time is talk to somebody about it. The goal of feeling low, and the goal of the beginning of this disease, is for you to remain quiet. And you remaining quiet and you not talking about it and you not seeking help is just the disease laughing at you, because it's getting worse and worse. And so I use it from a competitive standpoint. Screw that. Flip it. Like, let's go out there. Let's, you know, if you're anybody, talk to your loved one, talk to your friend, and just say, listen, I'm not feeling well. You know, I'm not feeling well. I'm not sure what's going on. And then go seek medical attention. Go seek therapy. Go to your primary care physician and start that process. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I would think that if somebody was 6 weeks into not feeling well, it'd be a hell of a lot easier to treat than when it was 10 years into not feeling well. There's different degrees of this. So if you're going in 10 years and starting medication, it's pretty hard to find something that's going to work. If you're 6 weeks in and you're on medication, you would think that it's going to be potentially easier to find a solution, right? So all of it comes down to is just treating it like any single other medical condition and going in and getting that help as quickly as you can. You have tennis elbow, it starts hurting. You're going to go in and try to get a physician to give you some guidance, get some physical therapy. That's all we got to do, is just treat our mind that same way. Try not to be quiet. Try to be talkative about it. Try to open up about how you're feeling, and do not feel judged about it. Do not feel shame about it. This is nothing that you've asked for, and you're a beautiful person who is trying to seek help and get better. That's all that we need.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, John. And one other question that came to my mind, but then we got on a different route, was on the treatment you got, is there a specific, let's say, time within, like, that it has to be performed, age, any specific things you want to mention on that?
Yeah, so my surgery, deep brain stimulation, is in the process in the United States right now of going through FDA clinical trials. Abbott is the medical device company who is taking this on. They started taking patients in January of this year. There's going to be 100 patients that essentially get taken into this clinical trial. I don't know the length of how long this will take, but I would guess multiple years until FDA approved. But this will be for the most severe form of folks with depression. But at least it will be something, hopefully, in the future that will be accessible to folks. And that's all that we can ask for, and that's all that we're psyched for. The other aspects of transcranial magnetic stimulation, that's something that can be done earlier in the process. And then electroconvulsive therapy is kind of the last part of the current treatment paradigm, which is another one of my goals, is to make sure that that's obliterated and taken off the table for treatment for human beings. It's in my opinion, not an acceptable treatment to do to human beings, but it's the current thing right out there that's the gold standard for treatment-resistant depression, and that is 90-year-old technology. The gold standard for treatment-resistant depression is electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy. So you have to have a stigmatized condition for a stigmatized treatment for a stigmatized condition that's 90 years old. That's the best that we can do from a society standpoint, which is absurd. And so advancing technology, advancing research, from a government standpoint where I am, the fact that we're holding back research dollars makes zero sense. This is about humanity. What we need to do is continue to invest as many dollars as we can into research to cure these maniacal diseases, whether that be through foundations, whether that be through government. And let's get these amazing scientists who are focused on curing these diseases as much assets as we can to make the research flourish and shine.
Great. Thanks, John. Thank you for elaborating on that. And we're coming to an end. I felt this was a really valuable, open conversation. Lots of touching things that we discussed. So I really appreciate your openness, the mission you have in life. And I'm pretty sure getting out of the situation you were at, the problem, I don't know if it's an illness, how to put it in the right context, but to open yourself with your loved ones as well could be a hard step. But I'm pretty sure, as you say, once you let it out from your chest and share it with others, especially loved ones, I bet it makes a huge difference.
I'll end on this. Thank you, first off, for having me. But to shine a light on where we are, you get cancer, everybody feels sorry for you. They rally around you and fight with you. Should you die, everybody feels horrible for you. You get life insurance. 5K races are done in your honor for the rest of your life, and society feels horrible for you. You get serious mental illness. You get ostracized, judged, labeled, shamed. You get spit on by society. You have zero support while your brain is being ravaged and wrecked. You die by suicide, which is the exact way that the disease is trying to kill you. 99.9% of the time, you do not receive life insurance if that's the case. So now you financially have your family ruined too. And then society pisses on your grave. So your family gets to feel that stigma and shame for the rest of your life. That is the difference. And that is how we as a world are treating two different diseases that nobody has asked for. It's as simple as that. This is 100% on society. We need to do much better. We need to show empathy. We need to show kindness. We need to change our thought process so that we can be better quality human beings. And I very much appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, John. And obviously, we're sharing links to follow you to see the latest and greatest from this specific research that is happening, and to know how we can better support and make a better job as a society to help cure or support anyone with mental illnesses, not only physical ones.
You're the best. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Let's go Canada.
Go Jays. Bye, John.